Hello students, in the last class we have discussed about preservation by using salt and vinegar. In that we have discussed about the preservation of pickles, how they are prepared, the different methods involved and what are the different processes that are involved and different types of pickles and the various problems that we encounter during the preparation of these pickles. So today we will see another set of products. Those are preserved by using your salt. So that include your chutney and sauces. Let's see what's the difference between a chutney and a sauce and what is the method that differentiate them from one another and how they are being prepared and what are the various problems that you encounter during the preparation of these chutneys and sauces. Chutneys and sauces are one of the most important products that are prepared from fruits and vegetables that are exported from India to other countries, especially the Middle Eastern countries, so where they like our Indian chutneys, so for the delicacy of the spice. So they are basically used as appetizers. So whenever you feel the mouth watering tomato pickle or a mango pickle, so it improves the digestive capacity of a person by uh, increasing the flow rate of this digestive juices in the digestive system. So they are basically appetizers and they improve the palatability and the taste of the food. So before starting a meal, so it's always a customary for Indian cuisine or even your Andhra cuisine, you use these chutneys for improving the palatability and to improve the appetizing, uh, so that will help in the digestion process. These chutneys and sauces are preserved because of the presence of salt in them and the spices, either it may be whole spices or extracted spices in the vinegar. Along with that, they may not add sugar, and then and the acid, that is in terms of acetic acid or vinegar they add, so that this will help in the preservation of the chutney. So these are basically used as appetizers. Let's first discuss about chutneys. I need not to explain what chutneys are. You are all well aware of what these chutneys are, and you know much better than me how these chutneys taste like. But I'll try to explain you what makes the chutneys and how they are different from the sauces and how the process that differs from the preparation of jams. So why I am talking about a jam in a chutney. It is nothing but a jam is similar to that of a chutney. Can you imagine? In the case of a jam, you cook the pulp along with sugar, isn't it? And in the case of a chutney, the pulp is cooked along with sugar. In addition to that, you are going to add some spices and salt along with that. So it's a jam wherein which you are going to mix salt and spices, that becomes a chutney. So that means a chutney is nothing but a jam, except that it is added with spices, salt and vinegar, so that becomes a chutney. So there are many popular chutneys which are available, like tomato chutney, mango chutney, or a carrot chutney, or mixed fruit chutney, and the different fruits can be made use in a special way and this process of making chutney, so that uh, popular appetizers can be made, which can be uh, which can be made available to the local market or even to the export oriented market. Here in the case of a chutney, instead of adding whole spices, they add the extract of the spices into the chutney, so that while enjoying the taste of the chutney, you won't get to have the disturbance of getting a whole spices stuck in between your teeth. So that makes it really uncomfortable whenever you feel like having a chutney. So it has to be a smooth texture, so it has to be a high TSS substance, so that makes it different from that of a sauce. So here it will be a thick sauce can be called as a chutney. So you're getting my point? Thick sauce is called as a chutney. So here if you see, you look at the specifications, the fruit percentage has to be around 40% in the final product, and the TSS, it should not be less than 50%. So it is not less than 50%, and acidity not more than 2.1%. So this you should keep it in the mind, that it is a very thick product, unlike that of a sauce where it is very thin or very free flowing, unlike the chutneys which are having a high TSS. To know about fruit chutney, we'll try to understand how the basic method of preparation of fruit chutney is being carried out. What exactly is the method of preparation of fruit chutney? In what way it is different from the preparation of a jam, and what aspects, at where exactly you are going to add sugar, and where exactly you are going to add vinegar, and how do you judge the end point. So that's how you prepare a fruit chutney, how it is being prepared. And then to know better of its method of preparation, we'll take one or two examples like mango chutney and apple chutney, and try to understand how it is being prepared. And here in this particular slide you can see that there is a mention of different fruits like mango, apple, plum, apricot, and papaya are being mentioned. So what is the requirement for 1 kg of these fruit pulps? So for example, if you take into consideration of a mango fruit pulp, so for 1 kg of mango fruit pulp, what are the various ingredients that are required to prepare a chutney? So you need 750 grams of sugar, 10 grams each of spices like your cumin, black pepper, cinnamon, aniseed, and 10 grams each of large cardamom, red chili powder, and 45 grams of salt, and 50 grams of chopped onion, and 15 grams of chopped garlic, and 170 ml of vinegar, and 4 to 5 clove heads, headless ones you need, and then 250 ppm of sodium benzoate. So if you use these ingredients, you can come out with a nice fruit chutney recipe. You can follow that with any of the fruits that are available, and then you can prepare your own chutney. Let's see how a chutney is being prepared. Fruits and vegetables, they are cut into thin pieces, and then initially the fruit pieces will be very hard. So these hard pieces are softened by dipping them in hot water, by placing them in hot water so that they will be softened. So once they are softened, then they are cooked either by slow method or by brisk method. So it is always preferable to cook these chutneys slowly. So the slow method of cooking is better than a faster method of cooking. And then once they are under cooking process of slow cooking, so add onions and garlic in the initial stages, so that their harsh flavors or the dominant flavors are mellowed down. There the flavor of this onion and garlic are brought down, and then you add salt, so during the cooking process. So while this is turning into a soft textured substance, so then you need to add spices. This addition of spices can be carried out in three different methods. Either you can powder the spices coarsely means not very fine, to a texture which is granular in nature. Either you can make the spices coarse texture, and then can be added to the mixture of these vegetables that are cooking, or else instead of adding coarsely powdered spices, you can also do another thing. You prepare a spice bag. So in the last slide you have seen all the spices that are present, so like your cumin or cardamom or pepper. So all these are made into a fine powder or a coarse powder, and then they are placed inside a muslin cloth, so that becomes a spice bag. So a spice bag is nothing but inside a muslin bag, that is muslin cloth, you will place the all the spices in a kacha pacha, or what you call a coarsely grinded form, so that when it is tied and the spice bag is tied, when it is dipped into the chutney mixture, so the spice extract is extracted into the chutney, so that it only gains the flavor of the spices into the chutney, but not leaving any coarse spices left inside the chutney. So the chutney will remain smooth in the absence of having your coarse granular powdered spices. So you just need the flavor of the spices, not the whole spices. Or else you can do another thing, addition of spices, by using spiced vinegar extract. So the vinegars, the spices are soaked, either soaked in the vinegar or boiled in the vinegar, thereby you can prepare a spiced vinegar. So any of the three methods can be followed for addition of spices. And continue the cooking process till it reaches jam's consistency. You know jam's consistency, you can measure it with the TSS, or at the temperature. So if the temperature is reaching around 105 degrees Celsius, that means it has reached the consistency of a jam. So at that time you can stop cooking, and then while the chutney is hot itself, hot only, you are going to pour them or fill them into the hot sterilized jars, and then later it can be pasteurized at a temperature of 82 degrees Celsius for about 30 minutes. So that will help in the storage of this chutneys for a longer periods of time. So once it is processed, cool it down and store it in a cool dry place. Let's see how a mango chutney is prepared. So for the preparation of a mango chutney, you need mature mangoes. So it depends upon what kind of mango chutney you're going to prepare, whether it's sour one or sweet and sour type mangoes, so sweet and sour type of chutney. So you can choose depending upon your taste requirement, uh, what kind of chutney you are interested in. So if you want a sweet sour type, so you can use the mangoes which are matured ones. And then if you want to have chutney which is sour one, you can use mangoes so which are matured but not ripe, right? So you can use mature mangoes, wash them, peel them and de-stone them, remove the stone, and then make into fine pieces, make into thin pieces. And then so these pieces will be hard initially, so to soften them, so what you do is soften them by cooking in water, by cooking in hot water, right? So once you cooking in what starts cooking in water, they become softened. So once they are softened, so start adding sugar and salt. In the case of mango chutney, in the initial stages only we are going to add sugar and salt, and then once they become completely softened, then you try to incorporate spices in them. So these spices can be incorporated, not directly putting the spices, whole spices or ground spices into the chutney. So you just need to incorporate the extract of the spices. We don't need a cardamom coming in between your teeth while enjoying a mango chutney, or pepper coming in between your teeth while chewing the uh, chutney. So instead you can have the extract of these cardamom or pepper by making a spice bag. Already told you how to make a spice bag by using a muslin cloth. So put a muslin cloth and place all the spices. The spices has to be coarsely ground, coarsely ground and made into the in the form of a bag. The muslin cloth has to be made in the form of a bag by tying thoroughly with a twine thread or any kind of thread, and then place this spice bag into the cooking mixture, so that it will be dipped in the chutney mixture that is on the pan, right? So when it is cooked, when it's undergoing cooking process, you need to thoroughly press it now and then, so that whatever the spices, flavors or the oils that are being emerging they need to be out of that bag and get into the chutney mixture. And then when the chutney reaches the consistency just like that of a jam at a temperature of 105 degrees Celsius, it reaches the consistency similar to that of jam. At that moment you can just remove the spice bag. So by squeezing, just before removing the spice bag, squeeze out all the juices from the spice bag and allow it to drip into the chutney mixture. And then finally, before removing from the pan, so you just need to add a required amount of vinegar and then cook for few minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, and then take it out and fill while the chutney is still hot into the bottles and seal it airtight and store in a cool and dry place. Apple chutney also can be prepared similar to that of a mango chutney, but there are slight variations. These variations I have highlighted in yellow. So you can see addition of salt and addition of sugar and vinegar is at different times of the cooking process. The sugar in the case of mango chutney is added along with the salt in the initial stages before adding a spice bag, isn't it? And here in the case of preparation of apple chutney, the sugar is being added just before lifting out or just before completion of the preparation of apple chutney. So here also apples, you choose the apples and then they are thoroughly washed, peeled and then made into cubes or slices, and then they need to be softened by cooking them in water. So once they are softened, and then you start adding only salt. So here you're not going to add sugar initially, and then add spices except vinegar and sugar. So here in the initial stages we are not going to add sugar, so we are adding sugar along with the vinegar at the end of the after end point, right? So you add spices in the form of spice bag, similar to that of what we have done in the case of mango chutney. You just need to prepare a spice bag and then pressing it occasionally to allow the spices to enter into the chutney, and then it is cooked to a consistency similar to that of a jam. So once you reach the consistency of a jam, so at 105 degrees Celsius, we just need to remove the spice bag. So before removing the spice bag, just squeeze out what are the contents and the juices from the spice bag, and at this moment you are going to add along with the vinegar sugar. The required amount of sugar has to be added and vinegar has to be added and cook for a period of 5 minutes, and then when it is hot, so this chutney has to be bottled and then sealed into airtight containers, stored in a cool and dry place. So that becomes apple chutney. Now we'll discuss about sauces, how these sauces are different to that of chutneys. So if you compare that of jams and jellies, chutney is similar to that of a jam and a sauce is similar to that of a jelly, right? So here in the case of a jam, use the entire fruit pulp for the preparation of jam. Similarly in the case of chutney, also use the entire fruit pulp for the preparation of chutney. In the case of a sauce, so just as in the case of a jelly, you remove pectin, but here it's not the pectin that you are going to separate. You are just going to separate the unwanted seeds, skin or any kind of stalks present in it. So you cook the pulp and sieve it and separate the unwanted seeds, skin and fruit stalks, so that the pulp whatever you are getting will be giving a smooth consistency to the final product, that is your sauce. I think you must be well aware of how a sauce looks like. For example, in the case of a tomato chutney, we use the entire tomatoes, so which includes skin, seeds, everything of the fruit will be included to make into a chutney. So you are not going to separate the skin and the seeds, isn't it? But while making a sauce, so what you do is you cook the fruits and the pulp and make it into a fine paste, and then after that we are going to separate the skin of the tomatoes, and you are also going to separate the seeds of the tomatoes by sieving them. So while allowing them to pass through a sieve, fine sieve, so that the seeds and the skin will be retained in the sieve and you will be getting a fine pulp. So this fine pulp is used for the preparation of what you call a tomato sauce, right? And this tomato sauce will be added with the sugar and then salt and then a spice bag, and it is allowed to cook to get a fine consistency, right? That's how a sauce is different from that of a chutney. Even the specifications of sauce are entirely different from that of a chutney. So if you look at the sauce, the TSS is very less. It says not less than 15%, while in the case of a chutney, if you remember, it should not be not less than 50. So it should be more than 50 percentage, right? So that's a huge difference. So that means chutneys are thicker and while the sauces are thinner, right? And even the acidity, so in the case of sauces, as in terms of acetic acid, it should be not less than 1.2%. It should be more acidic in nature, right? But in the case of chutneys, it should not be more than 1.2%. Those are less acidic in nature, right? Chutneys are less acidic and sauces are slightly more acidic compared to chutneys, right? You got the difference. And here sauces, you have two types. Those are thin sauces and thick sauces. So thin sauces are basically ones which are having low viscosity. So they contain extracts which are for vinegar, includes spices and herbs. So the vinegar will be having the extracts of spices and herbs. So those are low viscosity. Those are called as thin sauces. And there are thick sauces which are having high viscosity. So there are thin sauces and thick sauces, and there are types of sauces. The quality of a sauce can be considered as good based on the characteristics like its pouring nature, based on the color and how it is sealed into the bottle. You can judge that the sauce quality is good if it is pouring freely. So the pouring ability of the sauce is good into another container without the tissues are getting separated. If it is pouring freely, that means it is a good sauce. And when it is having a bright color, so then also it will be considered as a good sauce. But certain sauces, they may turn into black color, so because of a black neck, so those are all not considered as good sauces. And the way it is being packed, so the neck of the bottle has to be covered with a paraffin wax to give that airtight appearance, airtight sealing for the bottles. Such sauces are considered to be of good quality sauces. Most of you may be having a doubt regarding the differences between a sauce and a ketchup. Sauce is nothing but it's a thin one, so whose TSS is less than 15 degree Brix, whereas a ketchup is a more thicker version of a sauce. So if a sauce is thicker and if it is having a TSS more than 15 degree Brix, so that becomes a ketchup. So there is a difference in terms of their TSS. If it is having less than 15 degree Brix, it's a sauce. If it is having a TSS more than 15 degrees, it is a ketchup. Sauces can be prepared from different kinds of fruits like plum, apple, papaya, and even mushrooms can also be used for the preparation of sauces. You can get very good quality sauces by soaking these fruit tissues in vinegar or by boiling them in vinegar. So you extract the contents of the fruit by soaking them in vinegar or by boiling them in vinegar to prepare high quality sauces. So after preparation of these extracts, and then while preparing the sauces, you can also use some thickening agent so that it will prevent the sedimentation of the solid particles. so that it will remain intact by adding certain thickening agents. To understand how it is prepared, we will know what are the various ingredients required for 1 kg of fruit or a vegetable. So here in this slide you can see different fruits or vegetables like tomato, apple, plum, mushroom or a papaya. So for 1 kg of the fruit pulp or vegetable pulp you need how much of the other ingredients, like for example if you take 1 kg of tomato pulp, so you need around 75 grams of sugar, 10 grams of salt and 5 grams each of cardamom, red chili powder, and then 10 grams of chopped garlic, 50 grams of onion and 5 grams of chopped garlic and 5 ml of acetic acid and 10 grams of each cumin and aniseed powder, and to which you need a preservative, that is a sodium benzoate 0.25 grams per every kg of the sauce that is going to be prepared, right? And this are the ingredients required for 1 kg of tomato pulp, right? And the sodium benzoate, that is the preservative that is going to be used, it is for the prepared sauce. So if you are getting a sauce, so which is around 250 grams, so I have to reduce it, like for 1 kg of the prepared sauce you need to add around 0.25 grams of the sodium benzoate. Let's understand how a sauce is being prepared, the general method of preparation of a sauce. At the background you can just imagine by taking an example of a tomato. So here if you take a tomato as a vegetable, wash the vegetable and then sort it and make into slices, and this is allowed to cook for 3 to 5 minutes in a cooker. So allowed to cook it to find consistency wherein you can press the pulp to pass through a strainer. So you have a strainer, a stainless steel strainer or any kind of strainer, to which you can pulp the you can strain the pulp, right, after cooking it to a fine consistency where you can press the cooked tomatoes, and while you are pressing along the what do you call the strainer, the pulp goes through the strainer, and there in the strainer what will be left, the seeds and the skin will be left in the strainer itself, and whatever the stalks or fruit stalks, if at all if it is present, and you will be left with only the fine pulp that will be collecting. So that fine pulp is the differentiating factor that will be extracting in the case of a sauce, whereas that fine pulp is absent in the case of chutney. So that is the differentiating character from the chutney, right? Once you cook it and extract the pulp, so you can also extract the pulp by using a pulper or a baby pulper. You can feed the tomatoes to a baby pulper if you are doing in a large scale, and so inside the pulper there will be a cylinder, so which will be having thin holes, and there are brushes. So you already have seen in the practical class identification of a pulper. You have a baby pulper, so where you place the tomatoes inside and then the brushes will rotate, and then there will be holes through which you'll be getting a fine pulp which is devoid of or which is lacking the seeds and the skin. So you'll be getting a fine pulp. You can use that pulp, or else you can boil the fruit and then strain the pulp to get a fine extract, fine pulp, so without seed and the skin, and then this pulp is used for cooking. So you cook it with initially half the amount of sugar that is recommended for preparation of a sauce. So the required amount of sugar is divided into two parts. Half of it is used at the initial stages only for the preparation of the sauce. So here is the tip why we are going to use this sugar. So for example in the case of a tomato, so tomato while it is under the cooking process, it is directly exposed to atmosphere and causes oxidation and loses this pigment and turns out to be a faded product, so which is not as bright as that of tomatoes that you initially used because of oxidation, various other changes. So to stick that color, to retain the red color nature of the tomatoes, to have that color, so what you do is this sugar will help in sticking that red color, so that the end product will remain in bright red color. After adding sugar to the pulp and is allowed to cook, and then during the process of cooking you place a spice bag. A spice bag is nothing but it's a muslin cloth in which there are coarsely ground spices in them, and then finely chopped onion, ginger, garlic, and other coarsely grounded spices like your cardamom, red chili powder, aniseed powder, and cumin. So these are all placed and tied in the form of a bag using a muslin cloth, and this muslin cloth is allowed to place in the cooking medium, that is the fruit pulp and the sugar that is under the process of cooking. So during this process what will happen, the spices that are present in the muslin bag slowly be extracted into the pulp, giving its unique flavor to the sauce. Spice bag is placed in the cooking pulp. It has to be continuously be pressed so that the extracts get into the cooking pulp, and it has to be cooked to consistency which is similar to that of a jam consistency. So it will be usually one third of the original volume of the pulp that is being used. So once it has reached, once the volume has reduced to one third of the original volume, it gives an indication. Then you can remove the spice bag by pressing it so that the extracts get into the cooked pulp. After reaching one third of the original volume, and then after removing the spice bag, and then you can add remaining amount of sugar and the entire salt, and then further you need to cook for a period of 2 to 5 minutes, and then you can judge the end point, so by placing one drop of the boiling contents on a plate. So if you place it on a plate, if it doesn't start oozing water, if it is not spreading, so that means it has reached the end point. If water starts oozing out, so that means it still needs to be cooked, right? So once it is showing the end point, then you can just add the vinegar and the required amount of preservative. While it is still hot, pour into the bottles and then pasteurize at 85 to 90 degrees Celsius for about a half an hour, and then cool it down and store it in a cool and dry place. The most common problem that you come across during the preparation of sauces or chutneys is formation of black neck in the bottles. In the bottles where you store these chutneys and sauces, in the neck region you will see the formation of black coloration. So that is as a result of formation of ferrous tannate, so which is oxidized to form a black color. How is this ferrous tannate is formed? Ferrous tannate is formed as a result of reaction between iron and the tannins. Iron comes from the equipment which are used for the preparation of these sauces. So the equipment contains metal like iron, or even the caps, the crown caps which are used for the sealing of the bottles. It also contains iron, or even the salt or sugar which is used for the preparation of sauces may also contain traces of this iron, and this iron reacts with the tannins, and the tannins comes from the spices contain lot of tannins. So these tannins and the iron which is originated from the either the machinery or from the salt or sugar, which will react, and then it causes production of a compound called ferrous tannate, and which upon oxidation will give rise to a black coloration which forms a black neck in the bottles. What are the ways by which you can prevent the formation of such black necks? So you know the reason for the formation of black coloration. Mainly the oxidation or preventing the entry of iron or preventing the contact of iron. So these two factors can be eliminated so that the black coloration or black neck can be prevented. The first thing is prevention of oxidation. So this can be prevented by filling the hot sauce into the bottles at a temperature not less than 85 degrees Celsius. So that will take care of preventing the oxidation. So there won't be any available oxygen so to react and to form this black coloration. And even if you leave less head space, so there is a presence of more head space causes more accumulation of air, which in turn will help in the process of oxidation, which will eventually cause blackening. So those two can be taken care of preventing the oxidation. And also by storing the bottles in either horizontal or inverted position, so that wherever the entrapped air or oxygen is there, it gets diffused into the sauce and prevents the formation of a black neck. So these are the three methods by which you can prevent the oxidation. You can even reduce the iron contamination, or also by replacing the sugar by corn syrup or glucose. That will also help in preventing blackening. So there here you are going to prevent the contact of iron with the tannins. So you will be removing or eliminating the iron component, which will be leading to the formation of ferrous tannate and eventually black color. So two things if you take care of, either preventing the oxidation or preventing the contact of iron or eliminating the iron factor, you can prevent the black neck.